Imagine setting sail in the Middle Ages, hunched over a crate of hardtack and naturally a parachute, just in case your next port of call was the infinite abyss at the world's edge. Picture signposts reading, "Here be dragons and gravity problems," plastered like barnacles on the hull of imagination. Thanks to popular myth, we're told medieval sailors spent their voyages nervously scanning the horizon for the great cosmic waterfall, ready to swan dive into oblivion. If true, their travel insurance premiums would have been astronomical. Snisroka loss of life, accidental descent from terrestrial plane. But here's where the myth sinks faster than a leaky dinghy. Most educated folks, from ancient Greeks straight through medieval navigators, already knew the planet was round enough for a decent game of cosmic beach ball. Ship captains weren't mapping anti gravity zones or budgeting for space boots. They worried far more about storms, sea monsters, or, God forbid, the wrath of the ship's cook, a fate worse than plummeting off the edge, especially given medieval cuisine. Our old friend Eratosthenes crunched the numbers on Earth's circumference over 2,000 years ago with math sharper than a pirate's cutlass. So, where did this flat Earth panic come from? Mostly 19th century writers and dramatists, eager to spice up textbooks with tales of nautical near misses and cosmic cliffhangers. Yet, like a catchy chorus in a sea shanty, albeit one lacking rhythm and evidence, the image lives on, valiant mariners clinging to their masts, eyes wide for a planetary drop off that was never there. Next time you hear the myth, remember, navigators feared shipwrecks, not interstellar freefalls. No safety rails required. While some believed the Earth had an edge to fall off, sailors' real challenges lay in navigating vast oceans without the modern tools we take for granted. Hook. Picture early sailors squinting at endless water and muttering, "If only the holy grail of GPS would drop from the heavens." One wrong turn, and instead of, "You have arrived," it's more like, "Congrats, you've just upgraded to seaweed stew." Myth. We love picturing ancient mariners as hopelessly lost, drifting like cosmic castaways, just waiting for someone to invent Google Maps. Without satellites or smartphones, they must have navigated by pure trial and error, and maybe the occasional yelling match with a bewildered parrot. Facts. But buckle your tricorn hats. The truth isn't so sea blind. Early sailors cracked nature's own GPS. The sun, stars, wind patterns, and even homebound bird flocks. Long before plastic compasses, there were astrolabes, cross staffs, and the mystical lodestone compass. Polynesian navigators were surfing the Pacific waves, reading ripples and star songs, while most Europeans still thought rowboat was cutting edge technology. Vikings tackled the North Atlantic armed with sunstones, iron nerves, and a stubborn refusal to admit we're lost. Norse Ceres' response? "Sorry, didn't catch that island." Punch. Sure, Columbus didn't have Google Maps, but at least his voyages were mercifully free of recalculating route. Pop ups and fights over bad Spotify playlists. Ancient mariners might have gotten turned around, but they couldn't blame traffic jams or dying batteries. Bridge. So next time you can't find your way out of a parking garage, remember those early explorers. They trusted the cosmos instead of viciously cursing their phones. Oceanic pioneers didn't drift cluelessly until apps saved the day. They were reading nature's instruction manual long before we hit start route. The skill of early navigators might seem limited, but some claim that advanced navigation techniques were lost with legendary civilizations like Atlantis. Did humanity lose all savvy navigation skills when Atlantis allegedly sank, or is this just another myth best left at the ocean floor? Atlantis always surfaces in conversations about lost knowledge, as if every sailor since has been aimlessly drifting, wishing Plato had just emailed them the map. The B list legend claims Atlantis had navigation tech that made Magellan look like he needed training wheels. Some say their gadgets were so advanced, if Atlanteans really had GPS, today's ways would owe them royalties, and maybe a software update or two. The persistent tale goes like this: Atlantis took their compasses, charts, and whatever proto Google maps they had straight to the seabed, leaving the rest of humanity to roam like motorists stranded without cell service. But dig a little deeper, preferably with a sextant, not a shovel, and you'll find humanity's navigational smarts never went missing. Ancient civilizations flaunted their seamanship with style. The Phoenicians zipped around the Mediterranean like caffeine fueled delivery drivers. Vikings braved the North Atlantic chill, steering by sun and secret sunstones. Polynesians, they sailed thousands of miles across the Pacific using only stick charts and starlit skies, no Atlantean Wi Fi required. If ancient mariners didn't call tech support when lost, they did the next best thing. They called the stars. Navigation didn't sync with Atlantis. It evolved, surfacing in different cultures with every generation of sailors unwilling to become coral decorators. So while Atlantis may have gone under, our sense of direction stuck around, unlike my car keys. Maybe Atlantis's real legacy isn't gadgets, but a salty tradition of navigation, just exaggerated by centuries of fishtails. Whether advanced knowledge was lost or not, many think that new lands were discovered solely by chance, as if every voyage was an accident. Ever wonder why so many continents were discovered by sailors who looked more desperate for a bathroom than a breakthrough? Forget the grand tales of heroic explorers boldly charting empty oceans. Most of history's maritime eureka moments were closer to, oops, wrong turn. Let's bust the myth. We picture Columbus, Captain Cook, and Leif Erikson as precise navigators, coolly plotting their epic routes. Reality check. If Columbus had Apple Maps, he'd still be in the Bahamas asking locals for directions to India. These guys weren't masterminds of exploration. They were basically butt dialing their way into history, accidentally marrying continents while searching for a spot to relieve themselves. 15th century sailors had no GPS, no Google, not even reliable clocks. Their navigation toolkit? Hope, half baked maps, and enough rum to silence existential dread, and most importantly, the screams of their bladders. Discovering new lands usually meant running aground in a fog bank while cursing the ship's non existent bathroom situation. Once on shore, many explorers insisted they'd reached their intended destination, conveniently ignoring the suspiciously exotic plants, animals, and locals holding "Not India" signs. When the blunder was obvious, European captains just called the place new for home's benefit. Never mind the people who'd lived there for centuries. Most accidental landfalls weren't even worth a footnote, unless congrats, you found a rock and got scurvy, is your kind of riveting reading. Still, these navigational blunders shaped the world, for better or worse. So next time you admire a statue of an intrepid explorer, remember, history's greatest discoveries often began with a desperate sailor, a busted map, and one eternal quest, a decent toilet. This notion feeds into the myth that pre Columbian peoples never intentionally crossed vast oceans, remaining trapped on their native shores. Picture ancient Americans as strict landlubbers, never daring to dip a toe or a canoe paddle into the endless blue. The bedtime story goes that indigenous peoples huddled by campfires, terrified that the ocean was less frontier and more monster closet, never dreaming of sea voyages. The myth persists that these primitive societies saw vast oceans as impassable, like Neptune himself posted a no humans allowed sign. But brace yourself. Archaeology floods that myth away. Long before GPS or package cruises, people from the Pacific to the Caribbean were skimming waves like seasoned mariners. Polynesian navigators didn't just island hop, they practically invented Yelp reviews for atolls. Caribbean cultures crafted canoes nimble enough for high seas, not just lazy river floats, and evidence for trans Pacific contact. It's as juicy as a pre Columbian sweet potato, literally, since sweet potatoes, native to South America, somehow washed up in Polynesia long before Columbus discovered anything. Turns out, sweet potatoes had a better frequent flyer program than most humans. Want receipts? Archaeologists have dug up shells from hundreds of miles away, seaworthy vessels, and even genetic breadcrumbs linking populations oceans apart. Thor Heyerdahl's Kon-Tiki raft sailed the Pacific, proving ancient boats weren't just driftwood with delusions of grandeur. The only thing ancient navigators feared was running out of snacks, not the ocean. So, while modern sailors panic when Netflix crashes at sea, their ancestors sailed on with nothing but stars, wind, and a sturdy canoe. Who needs Wi Fi when you've got celestial navigation and a thirst for adventure? The real myth? That anyone ever truly stayed put. Fear of the unknown, including terrifying sea monsters, was thought to keep sailors and explorers from venturing too far beyond familiar coasts. Hook. Imagine setting sail not just against winds, but battling krakens, sirens, and enough sea monsters to stock a horror franchise. Think modern GPS is confusing? Try navigating when your map boldly warns, "Here be dragons." Yeah, good luck with that. Myth, back when wooden ships creaked and smells were questionable at best. Sailors insisted the ocean was a monster mash. Dragons, leviathans, and multi armed horrors ready to turn your ship into a snack. These weren't just ghost stories. European maps flaunted flamboyant sea beasts, grinning like they'd just smelled dinner. With legends like that, who could blame any sailor for side eyeing every suspicious splash? Facts. Science was still in awkward adolescence, so whenever something odd popped up, giant squid, whales breaching, or ominous driftwood, someone shouted, "Monster?" Spotting a giant squid meant sea monster. Spotting Tom from accounting after happy hour meant needs less rum. Add a daily bucket of grog, and suddenly reality and monstrous myth blurred faster than the horizon in a gale. Punch. Some allegedly fearsome creatures were just misunderstood. Manatees, for example, must be both flattered and insulted that sailors once mistook them for enchanting mermaids. Proof that even at sea, Beer goggles can be dangerous. Bridge. Sure, the idea of falling off the world's edge or drowning in cursed waters might make us roll our eyes today. But back then, these legends served a double purpose: cautionary tales and 24/7 entertainment during endless, mind numbing days at sea. Besides, if you're going to be stranded somewhere, better to be with a sea monster story or three. Some even suggest that successful navigation was less about skill and more about luck, or perhaps a sailor's inebriation. Imagine plotting your course across the Atlantic, armed with nothing but a barrel of ale and a rabbit's foot. Surely every great explorer's secret recipe, right? Picture it: a salty sea dog steering the ship by the direction of his lucky socks and hollering, "Onward, men." The next round's on Poseidon. The popular myth? Early sailors winged it, putting faith in luck, liquor, and the occasional cooperative seabird over solid seamanship. This charming tall tale owes its life to brawling sailors, superstition soaked omens, and, let's be honest, some seriously spotty record keeping during those foggy, boozy nights. But history, that relentless party pooper, begs to differ. Fact is, sailors were part scientist, part wizard. Vikings wielded sunstones to trap hidden rays. Polynesians read stars, waves, and wind like celestial chatty Cathies, and medieval captains brandished astrolabes like ninja stars of navigation. Sure, booze flowed, but not for bravery. Water turned foul faster than you could shout, scurvy, so grog was less about swagger and more about survival juice. If navigating really depended on booze, modern GPS would just tell us to follow our gut feelings straight to the nearest pub. It wasn't all smooth sailing, pun definitely intended. Mistakes happened, but so did progress. Systematic advances gave us gems like Portolan charts, transforming sea maps from abstract doodles into practical tools. Yes, superstitions thrived. Who hasn't tossed a coin to the sea gods before setting sail? But these ran alongside rigorous training and ever sharpening tools. Columbus didn't stumble on America by accident, unless you count the world's longest bar crawl as a strategy. Trusting luck and lager alone is like letting your cat pick your road trip route. Technically possible, but not advisable. Those explorers made it ashore on clever minds, practical know how, and maybe just a splash of rum. Adding to these doubts, critics argue that ancient ships were simply too small and fragile to manage the challenges of open ocean travel. Picture ancient mariners not as jittery house cats clinging fearfully to shorelines, but as daring mariners with white knuckled grips firmly on the helm, skeptical of waves taller than their deck chairs. Yes, but hardly afraid to take the plunge. The myth? That those old boats were little more than glorified driftwood, fine for a calm, lazy river float, but hopelessly outmatched on the open ocean. Legend has it that pre Columbus sailors wouldn't venture beyond the sight of land unless pushed by, say, a particularly disgruntled mother in law. But hold your sea legs. Ancient shipbuilders were no nervous Nellies of nautical lore. Egyptians were already taming the Red Sea's salty tantrums with sturdy plank built vessels as early as the 3rd millennium BCE. The Phoenicians? Oh, they basically had the Mediterranean on speed dial. If your ship can cross that blue expanse without feeding the fish, you've officially earned open ocean street cred. Meanwhile, Greeks and Romans charted courses across the Aegean like Mediterranean pros, building ships made for endurance, cargo hauls, and the occasional Poseidon fueled showdown. Now, let's salute the true overachievers, Indian and Southeast Asian traders who surfed the monsoon slammed Indian Ocean like pros, Dramamine and umbrellas, optional. Columbus didn't invent the open ocean panic attack. Ancient sailors had already christened the seas with plenty of lost lunches. But the real MVPs, the Polynesians, the ultimate oceanic navigators, crisscrossing thousands of Pacific miles by reading stars like a celestial GPS, just with more coconut shells and fewer software updates. Still skeptical, archaeologists keep unearthing Bronze Age shipwrecks far from shore, boldly disproving the coast is safest myth. So next time you picture ancient sailors, forget jittery cats. Think bold, gutsy pioneers with sea legs made for open water drama.